Would you believe that a single woman's beauty once tore apart an empire? That the King of England, Henry II, the most powerful ruler of his age, built a secret labyrinth just to hide his forbidden lover? Welcome to Dark Historia, where the glittering crowns of Europe hide the darkest human desires. If you love untold royal secrets and forbidden love stories that changed history, don't forget to subscribe, and let's step into the maze together. 1173, Woodstock Palace, Oxfordshire. A woman lies on her silk bed, her fingers trembling over her swollen belly. Her name, Rosamund Clifford, the woman who made an empire tremble. As she carves her final words into the bedpost with blood-stained nails, her whisper fills the room. My rose's thorns will pierce every crown. They called her the fair Rosamund, the rose of the world, but even the most beautiful rose blooms on thorns. And when this rose bloomed under the jealous eyes of Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine, her beauty would become her curse, and her love, a legend written in blood. Henry II, a king of steel and flame. He ruled lands vast enough to swallow kingdoms. But even he could not rule his own heart. When the court whispered of his new mistress, he silenced them with gold and fear. But his obsession with Rosamund Clifford grew darker, deeper, like ivy wrapping around stone. He could not bear the thought of losing her to anyone, not even to the eyes of his queen. So the King of England did something no ruler had ever done before. He built a labyrinth, a secret paradise hidden within Woodstock Palace, a fortress of love, with walls that wound like a serpent, corridors lit by candlelight, and chambers scented with roses. No one knew how to enter, for only Henry held the key to its twisting heart. And inside that maze, Rosamund waited, a prisoner dressed as a goddess, the king's sweetest sin locked away from the world. For years, Henry came to her in secret, slipping away from council meetings and royal banquets. The world saw a king of power, but in the maze, he was just a man in love. He called her my rose, and she called him my lion. And every night, the lion knelt before the rose. But paradise built on lies cannot last. Every whisper in the palace corridors carried the scent of betrayal, and Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine was listening. The year was 1173. The great empire of the Plantagenets was cracking from within. The Queen, Eleanor of Aquitaine, had raised her sons against their father, and rebellion burned across the land like wildfire. But behind the flames of politics burned a far more personal fire, the fire of jealousy. The whispers of Rosamund Clifford had reached Eleanor's ears, and every mention of that name was a blade twisting in her heart. Eleanor, once the most powerful woman in Europe, the same queen who had marched through crusades, negotiated with kings, and ruled two nations, now found herself humiliated by a younger woman hidden inside a maze her own husband had built. The legends say that Eleanor disguised herself as a nun, slipping through Woodstock Palace under the cover of night. Torchlight flickered on the stone walls as she entered the labyrinth, each turn echoing with the sound of her fury. At the heart of the maze, she found Rosamund, resting among silken sheets, surrounded by roses. The two women stared at each other, one, the Queen of England, the other, the Queen of his heart. Eleanor held out a goblet. "Drink," she whispered, her voice like a dagger. The cup shimmered. Legend says it was filled with poison. Rosamund hesitated. She was not a warrior, nor a queen, only a woman who had loved the wrong man. Her eyes glistened, not with fear, but with resignation, and then silence. The roses around her bed seemed to wilt. The queen turned and vanished into the maze, leaving behind the echo of her revenge. Of course, historians say this story is myth, a cruel romance written by time. In truth, Rosamund may have died, not by poison, but by illness or childbirth, years later. Yet the legend endures, because it tells a truth deeper than fact. That love, when mixed with power, always ends in tragedy. Years passed, and yet Henry II could never escape the ghost of Rosamund. In the quiet after battles, when banners were lowered and the iron thrum of war went silent, he would find himself wandering the corridors of memory, back to Woodstock, back to the labyrinth where he had dared to imprison happiness, as if love could be walled in like a fortress. He ordered a tomb for her at Godstow Nunnery, a stone cradle for a rose that would never bloom again. Upon it, he inscribed the words the world would not allow him to say aloud. The rose of the world. Each year, on days no herald announced, the great king came like a penitent. No trumpets, no guards, only a single candle, a single shadow bending over cold stone. He left offerings gold silk and roses red as confession, not for a mistress, for a wound. But England belongs to the living, and kings do not grieve for long without consequence. Eleanor of Aquitaine endured, unbroken and unbowed, moving the pieces of empire with the steady hand of a seasoned queen. Their sons, Henry the young king, Richard, Geoffrey, John, were raised in a storm of love turned iron. They watched their father's heart betray his crown, and their mother's fire burn the map of Europe into submission. From that crucible came lions and traitors, saints and usurpers. This was not just a family. This was a furnace where destiny was forged. And still, the legend of Rosamund grew, whispered by nuns, painted in margins, sung by minstrels, and halls rank with smoke. Some said Eleanor poisoned her. Some said the king built the maze with spells. Some even claimed Rosamund drank willingly to save a kingdom from a queen's wrath. Truth is a fragile thing in the hands of time, but legend is iron. It does not rust. What remains is a lesson older than kings. Love is not the enemy of power. It is its mirror. Power commands, love compels. Crowns bend nations. A whisper in the dark bends a king. The roses placed on her tomb were eventually removed. The nuns feared the scandal. The court feared the memory. But memory clings where mortar fails. In every tale of a king who wanders from his throne, in every queen who learns that victory tastes of ash, Rosamund lives. Not as a saint, not as a sinner, but as a wound that never closed. Henry died as kings do, surrounded by titles, betrayed by blood, staring into a future he could not control. Eleanor endured as queens do, writing history while others bled upon it. And somewhere between them, in a garden no longer there, lies the truth of the Angevin heart, a maze without an exit, a rose without mercy. This was the love that shook a dynasty, the forbidden rose whose thorns outlived the hand that held them. If you felt the thorns of this story, subscribe to Dark Historia. Here, crowns glitter and bleed. Turn on notifications so you never miss when love and power collide. Tell me in the comments, did Eleanor kill Rosamund or did legend do it for her? I'll see you in the next descent into history's shadows.